Hello and welcome to this episode of Bake It Up a Notch. This is episode 3 of our 3-part custard spectacular. And while I probably shouldn't play custard favorites, I feel I've saved the best for last. In this episode, we are diving into cold set custards. We're going to be diving into 2 in this episode, Panna Cotta and mousse. Both delicious, both some of my favorites. The 2 delicious recipes we're going to make are going to give us an opportunity to cover all of the key things you really need to know to master cold set custards and maybe even create your own unique flavors at home. There's a lot to do, so let's get custarding. First up, we are going to talk about one of the first desserts I ever fell in love with. In Italian, panna cotta means cooked cream, and it is such a simple, easy dessert to make. It's made by setting a mixture of cream and sometimes other dairy or flavoring with gelatin until it's just set enough to be creamy and thick, but it's served cold. And this was a dessert I fell in love with at a restaurant we would go to for special occasions growing up. It was Lidia Bastianich's Kansas City outpost, known as Lidia's Kansas City. And when I went to pastry school and I learned how simple and versatile panna cotta was, it just became something I started making more and more. And what I love the most about it is that it is a great way to get really creative. You can turn it into lots of other sub-desserts, side desserts. In today's episode, I'm actually going to take that combination of fruit and cream that I love so much and make a layered panna cotta. And I think that's sort of, taking it up a notch, as it were. And it's going to have that little raspberry layer and then a creamy vanilla layer on top. But before we even get started making it, I want to talk about some of the other possibilities with panna cotta. Here on Food 52, I have a recipe that uses panna cotta as a tart filling, and that's one of my favorite ways to use it. It's the milk and cookies tart. It has a chocolate chip cookie crust and then a vanilla panna cotta, and when you eat it, it tastes like eating milk and cookies, but like sort of in reverse. It's so, so delicious, so yummy, and I even have panna cotta fillings in my book, The Book on Pie. It's a really versatile thing that you can take to a lot of places. And I also like taking panna cotta and molding it. If you put it in something like a silicone mold or even like a little paper cupcake mold, you can make a little fluted panna cotta, take it out, unwrap it, and it makes a seemingly very fancy plated dessert, but no one needs to know how simple it was. Here I've taken some berry puree, torn up some pieces of store-bought angel food cake, and then unmolded my panna cotta. And it's so beautiful and pretty, and I'm gonna drizzle some more berry puree over it just to kind of finish it off. And then I couldn't wait to dive into this myself. Just creamy, fluffy, sweet, and the perfect make-ahead dessert because the panna cotta needs to be chilled. Let's start with the berry layer of our panna cotta. So it's going to start by blooming some gelatin, and blooming gelatin is really easy. We've got a nice shallow bowl of cool water, and we sprinkle the gelatin evenly over the surface. The goal is to evenly hydrate the gelatin so that it becomes soft, and then later when we add it to this warm cream mixture, it's going to melt easily and evenly. So just try to get a nice even layer on the surface and let it sit for 5 minutes. Now, I've got my cream in a pot here. I'm starting to heat it up and I'm going to add my sugar. The main reason we're really heating the cream when we're making panna cotta is to dissolve the sugar and also to help us melt this gelatin. So we're really only heating it kind of to get the process going and for the sake of these other ingredients, which is why I'm gonna hold off everything else we've got over here. We've got a little bit of milk that's gonna go in here. We also have our berry puree. This one was made with raspberries. And we have some vanilla bean paste or vanilla extract, whatever you'd like to use. We're gonna add these later because it's going to help start to lower the temperature of the panna cotta base. That's going to make it chill faster in the refrigerator. I mean, we just wanna get to panna cotta. We wanna get to dessert time a lot faster. So once this comes to a simmer, and I know that all that sugar's dissolved, we're going to add our bloomed gelatin into the cream. We just want to heat that over low for just a little while to make sure that all of that gelatin is melted. And we're just going to stir this over low heat until that gelatin is completely dissolved and I don't see any visible spots anymore. All right, let's transfer this to a heat-safe container with a pour spout, such as a large liquid measuring cup, and then we can stir in our other ingredients. So we'll add the milk. Again, just starting to lower that temperature. We'll add our homemade berry puree. This one is a gorgeous bright red because it's raspberry. And let's add our vanilla. Now I'm using vanilla bean paste here. It would have been fine to add that in with the cream when we were heating it up. But when you use vanilla extract, it's actually really great to add that at the end of a recipe that involves heating, because it actually can dull that vanilla flavor for it to spend too long on the stovetop kind of getting warmed up. So like when I make things like custards where the vanilla is stirred in at the end, that is why. You want to retain the maximum amount of that vanilla flavor. Okay, I'm just stirring this to combine. And it's still warm, but that puree and the milk have started to kind of bring it down to not being as warm as it was inside our pot. So now we can just divide this evenly between our glasses. We need this to fully set before we can add on the next layer, the creamy vanilla layer of the panna cotta. So this needs to go into the refrigerator until it's set totally firm. It takes about 2 hours. Our raspberry panna cotta layer is set, so we're ready to make the vanilla layer. And it's made the exact same way. First, we'll bloom the gelatin so that it gets nice and hydrated. Let's set that gelatin aside to bloom, and we can heat up our cream. I'm gonna add the sugar in with the cream. Once the cream is scalded and the sugar is dissolved, we'll add our gelatin and let it melt. All right, the gelatin is melted. I'm gonna go ahead and pour it into a heat-safe container with a pour spout. I'll add my vanilla bean paste or vanilla extract, because this is our vanilla cream layer, and also the milk to help start to cool it down. Now we'll divide the vanilla mixture between our glasses to create the delicious creamy top layer. These need to go back into the refrigerator until that top layer is set, again, about 2 hours. Another very simple way that you can make panna cotta very beautiful is to just pour it into some kind of pretty serving dish. So for this episode, we're gonna use an assortment of little glasses. It's a great time to mix and match. All you need is some kind of small glassware from your kitchen, and we're gonna make a really beautiful layered dessert that is secretly so simple. Whenever you find the dishes that you're going to use, I like to put them on a small level baking sheet just to make them easier to transfer, and then I like to make sure I have room for that baking sheet in my refrigerator before I even start, because there's nothing worse than having a delicate tray of beautiful panna cotta and being kind of rustling in the refrigerator trying to make room for it. Today I'm gonna use raspberries, but you could use any berry that you like. And we talked about making berry purees and other fruit purees in our Easy Fruit Desserts episode. This is one of my favorite things we've done on Bake It Up a Notch, so be sure to check it out. You can go the berry route that I'm going today, or you can make different kinds of fruit purees to flavor your panna cotta. Or you can try flavoring it with other things like chocolate, or infusing the dairy base with things like tea, spices, herbs, and more. What flavors of panna cotta do you think you could come up with, and how can you picture turning it into a completely different dessert? A tart? A plated dessert? I want to hear your ideas in the comments. Mousse is a dreamy, light and fluffy dessert that is made by mixing some kind of flavorful base with some kind of aerator. Now, the aerator that I'm referring to can be any one of the 3 following things. It can be whipped cream, it can be whipped egg whites and sugar, aka meringue, or it can be whipped whole eggs and sugar, aka a pâte à bombe. All 3 of these aerators are made light and fluffy by whipping until a lot of air has been incorporated, and then they are gently folded into the base so as much of that air as possible is retained in the final mousse texture. Now, the flavorful base for the mousse can be any number of things. It can be something like melted chocolate, berry puree, or even some kind of prepared sauce like a lemon curd or a crème anglaise. Many mousse recipes will call for gelatin to help set the structure of the mousse. And again, this can make them a little bit more complicated. But there are exceptions to this rule. One exception is chocolate mousse. In fact, here on Food 52, there's a genius recipe that makes a delicious mousse using only melted chocolate and whipped cream. Because as the chocolate firms up, as it chills, it makes the delicious fluffy texture without any other ingredients, just keeping that aerated texture of the whipped cream and adding big chocolate flavor. Now another example is cream cheese, which is what I'm going to be using today. Cream cheese has a natural stabilizing effect, and I've talked about that many times on Bake It Up a Notch because I often use cream cheese to help stabilize my whipped cream. Plus, it makes it extra thick and so creamy and adds a little tang. It's so good. In today's episode, I'm going to make a delicious cheesecake mousse using cream cheese, and it comes together really, really quickly, and it's about as simple as mousse can get. Plus, it pairs really great with any other flavors you might want to add. Caramel, nuts, chocolate, fruit. The sky's the limit. Now, mousse recipes can seem very fancy, especially when we're finished. This is gonna look so beautiful in almost any serving dish you put it in, but it does take a little bit of hand-holding to get there. And what I mean by that is in this recipe, we actually need 2 aerators. We're going to be making sort of a whipped cream base with the cream cheese, and we're also going to be making a meringue. Now, this becomes tricky because you will actually need 2 mixer bowls to make this happen. If you don't have 2 mixer bowls like I do at home, or as we have many here in the Food 52 test kitchens, all you need to do is start by making the cream cheese base first. Transfer it to a medium mixing bowl and refrigerate it, wash and dry the bowl, and you can use it to make the meringue. I know that sounds like a lot of work, but trust me, this recipe is worth it. The finished mousse can be piped or spooned into any kind of serving dish, large or small. So if you want to kind of be able to scoop it family style, you can put it in a beautiful large serving dish, or you can do it in little individual ones and it'll look so, so pretty. In this recipe, the cream cheese is the base, but the first aerator, the cream, can actually be whipped right along with it. So that's how we'll start. And this is the same technique I use when I want to make my stabilized whipped cream. So the cream cheese will go into the bowl of our electric mixer fitted with the whip attachment. First, I'll whip it on medium speed for about 1 minute. Now with the mixer running on low speed, I'm going to add the cream in a slow, steady stream. Then I'm also going to add some lemon zest and some vanilla extract and just really flavor this base up. Look how beautifully that whipped up in like just a second. This is why I love this so much. Okay, our cream cheese base is ready. I'm just going to set it aside while we work on our second aerator, the meringue. We're going to make a Swiss meringue for this, which means we are going to cook the egg whites and sugar together to make sure that the eggs reach a safe temperature and the sugar dissolves before we whip it into a light, fluffy meringue. So what I'm gonna do is in a heat-safe bowl, I've got my sugar and also my egg whites, also some cream of tartar. We'll place this over a medium pot of barely simmering water. This is our double boiler sort of setup. I'll keep whisking this until the sugar is totally dissolved and the eggs reach a safe temperature, which is 160 degrees Fahrenheit. Once the mixture has reached the proper temperature, it's time to transfer it to our mixing bowl. Now, I was talking earlier about how you need 2 mixing bowls for this, but I forgot about another suggestion, which is that if you have a hand mixer, you can use that for either the base or the meringue, whichever you prefer. Let's pour this in. It's already looking kind of thick and delicious. Now we just need to aerate it so it can do its job in the mousse. All right, now we'll whip this on high speed until it reaches stiff peaks. We want to maintain as much of the aeration as we so carefully whipped into this meringue and also this base. So I want to fold in pretty gently, and to do that, I'm going to start by folding in about 1/4 of my meringue mixture just to help lighten this base. It should make it easier to fold in the rest. So I'm just going to mix that one in a little bit more thoroughly, and we're just lightening that cream cheese base with our yummy meringue. Once that first quantity is folded in, we can add the remaining meringue in 2 to 3 additions, just trying to only fold it until it is uniformly combined. Oh, this is looking so beautiful, so light, so fluffy. And then as this mixture sits in the refrigerator, it will firm up even more. So while it's fine to serve this immediately after putting it in the serving dishes, if you let it chill in the refrigerator, it's going to set up a little bit, but also retain that lightness and that airiness. It's really lovely. So once this is all finished and nice and combined, which I think I'm there, we're just gonna transfer it to a pastry bag, or you can use a spoon to carefully spoon it into serving dishes. I just like the pastry bag because it makes very quick work of it. We could serve these immediately, but like I said, I love how they get a little firmer, so I'm gonna refrigerate them for at least 1 hour. Here we go. the worst mistakes that can happen with cold set custards have to do with the gelatin. Gelatin is a very easy product to use as long as you follow the rules. When we talked about blooming the gelatin, I talked about having a wide surface area so that as you sprinkle the gelatin over, it can evenly get hydrated. In front of me, I have an example of what can happen if you don't do this. I have a really small bowl and I poured all the gelatin in the center instead of sprinkling it evenly over the surface. The result is that some of the gelatin around the outside edge is hydrated and bloomed, but some of the gelatin in the center is still firm and granulated. If I try to melt this right now, all of the hydrated gelatin would melt and all of the unhydrated gelatin would be gritty, icky, poor tasting pieces in my final custard. While this isn't that big of an issue because you can strain away any other pieces, not dissolving the full amount of gelatin can also cause problems with the setting of the custard. Here you can see that the top layer of these custards got kind of wrinkly. And the reason is because I didn't fully dissolve all the gelatin. I had to strain some of it out. And then the result is, even though this panna cotta did eventually set, it set unevenly. So the surface didn't set to be smooth and creamy, it's set to almost have a rippled effect. That means that basically the gelatin wasn't able to set it kind of from the outside in as it should. It set it very unevenly. And the result might be a little bit unpleasant texture when we go to eat it. Another thing that can happen, like in the case of our mousse, is not having proper aeration in the base. If you don't whip your aerators to the proper peaks, you could end up with a mousse texture that is sort of soft and runny or overly stiff and almost gritty or grainy. So remember, follow the visual cues and go back to our meringue episode where we talk about the different peaks of the meringue. There's soft, medium, and stiff. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Bake It Up a Notch, where we talked about cold set custards. We made a delicious layered panna cotta and we made a delicious cheesecake mousse, and I truly can't wait to dive into both of them. As always, the recipes for this episode are available in the video description below or on food52.com. And if this episode does inspire you to make some cold set custards of your own, please use hashtag #BakeItUpANotch and let us know in the comments. I love to know what you're making in your kitchens. I've had so much fun diving into one of my favorite types of desserts, custards, in this 3-part custard spectacular. If you missed the other 2 episodes, be sure to go back and catch them. And until next time, I want to wish you happy baking. Love you.